Hi, and welcome to Real Trail Talk. I am Donovan D'Souza from The Long Ways Better.
And I'm Mike Pybus from The Life of Pi. Welcome to episode 79. We have an episode we've actually wanted to do for quite a while now, but we haven't really gotten around to it, and obviously we're not experts.
Yeah.
So part 2 of this episode, Donovan interviewed a hiking coach, Rowan Smith, he started his own company, Summit Strength. So we'll have that coming up, but just to start, we'll get our own kind of thoughts on hiking and fitness and injuries and everything else.
Yeah, so this is a topic that I think early on when we wrote down all the episodes we wanted to do, we said hiking fitness, we should do this, and just never kind of got the right person in for this. But, it's something that we talk a lot about, I guess. We've both had plantar fasciitis issues and other things like that. And it is something that you have to work up to. Like, I think, sometimes you see a lot of people wanting to do, like, fastest known times. And, their hiking experience is quite minimal.
Yeah, even just going from, like, day walks to multi-day hikes, there's a different stress on your body. And
Definitely.
It's a repeated stress as well. So I think it's quite an underestimated part of hiking that doesn't really get talked about too much, because there's like not that many other activities where you go from being quite casual about it to here's 15 to 20 kilos on your back for 10 hours a day.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think we both talked about this in terms of, it's been quite a long time for both of us between multi-days. And I recently did an overnight on the Cape to Cape and realized that, yes, I've been doing a lot of cycling. Yes, my cardio health is probably the best it's ever been. My leg strength is probably even stronger than before the cycling. But my feet struggled because I just haven't been carrying, 15, 20 kilos on the back.
Yeah. We went for a ride about a month ago, and I'd stopped riding training and was in Tassie doing all this hiking, but then we get back out into the bikes. I was cooked on a few of the climbs. It's just, getting your body used to it, and as I said, stepping it up gradually, I think, is probably the best way to do it, along with some other strength training related to hiking.
Yeah, definitely.
But is there any kind of experiences or tips that you had when you were starting to level up with your long distance hiking that you could share?
Yeah, I guess I've been always like a T-Rex, strong lower body, weak upper body.
Yeah.
So I think it was just something I've been always sort of, not so much naturally, but just by, I think I was always stronger, so I was able to do things and it didn't come as difficult, as a difficulty to me. But certainly I've realized that there's a correct way to walk. There's like a certain more efficient way of walking. And that depends on your height. So your gait has to match that. Because if you're trying to walk, like, I'm not a tall guy, but if you're trying to walk with giant steps, you're not going to get that. So I have like quite quick, but very efficient steps. So things like that are really important. I think, sometimes your mind says you can't keep walking and you need to stop and take a break. And sometimes if you just keep walking, you actually can get to the summit and it's fine. But obviously, you also need to think of your heart if you've not been hiking before.
Yeah.
So you need to weigh up these sort of things. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with hiking is don't overextend yourself straight away. Don't go from walking 5K trails to doing 30Ks in a day, and same with don't go just walking 10K day hikes onto 20-30Ks a day with a full backpack. You've got to build it up. And another thing that I struggled early on with my multi-day hiking is also incorrect equipment. So my feet always had blisters on them because my shoes were exactly the same size as what my casual shoes are, which you always want to go half size to a size up, because your feet do swell over the day. Just getting the right socks, the right bag as well. I used to dislike the actual weight of walking day after day with a multi-day pack, because I had just a really bad pack and I would have sore shoulders and a sore back. But now that I've got an Osprey pack, everything's like, and I know how to pack it properly. It's not a breeze, but it's a lot easier than what it used to be. And doing multi-day hikes now, when I've got that fitness up, no big deal.
Yeah. I think that for me, it's the same thing. Like I look at my shoes, and they're always, I wear a 44 normally, and it's a 46 if it's a hiking boot, because you just need that extra space. And on top of that, the pack thing, I've talked about, I'm one of those Arn zealots.
Yeah.
That just really was sort of changed everything for me, because I had such neck and shoulder problems, and just getting that right pack and setting it up correctly, because that puts most of the weight more towards your hips rather than your shoulders. And it just, from that, made it so much easier for me to hike day in, day out. And also, I think I've realized that you need to do a lot more stretching and things like that at the end of the day. You can't just be like, oh yeah, I'll be fine.
Yeah. So a big thing that I had started doing was taking a massage ball and a TheraBand on hikes. And then, because if you're on the bib, you've got plenty of time when you finish the day just to stretch out, do some exercises. Because the last thing you want to do is just stop walking and just sit still for a while, because you seize up. Your blood flow is not there. You're not massaging everything and stretching all your muscles. So it just helps to have that in the afternoon, even if you just wander around camp for a while, just to kind of loosen the body up, so it doesn't seize up like an old man.
Yep.
Yeah. And related to that is also like extracurricular activities to your hiking. So I started doing Pilates 2-3 times a week during my peak Billman season, and it just helps so much more. Like, you've got extra flexibility, you're stretching out your muscles a lot, the core strength is actually a lot better, so when you've got that pack on your back and all the extra weight, it's not too much of an issue. I just found that it helped just all round in just life and hiking as well.
Yeah. I go for a monthly tune-up at a massage place, just because I was going to a physio all the time, and I realized what I really needed was just a tune-up, so that I was, I have, when I go there, they always say like I'm one of the worst in terms of like how tight I get. So, that going for that has really helped in terms of when I have those really extreme periods where, things are all just way out of whack, you can just stop it and get it all sorted, and you're good to go again. Yeah.
And another thing on the pain, though, it's kind of untalked about, but like as hikers, we like to hike through the pain sometimes. And having had some Achilles issues, it's not really fun if you're doing that long term. So if you do notice something up with your body, it's best to get it checked out. Go see a physio, or if it's your feet, go see a podiatrist, because a month out from hiking is a lot better than long-term pain.
Definitely. Yeah. And I can say, it's worked for me when I've had issues. You see a professional about it, and you're good to go again. And maybe, as you say, it's a month or two off from hiking, but that's better than not hiking ever again.
Yeah.
So those are our sort of quick tips. But earlier in the week, I had a chat with Rowan Smith from Summit Strength, and he's actually a professional trainer specifically for hiking. So here's something we prepared earlier.
Hello, Rowan speaking.
Hi, Rowan. Donovan here. How are you?
Hey, Donovan. I'm really good, mate. Really good. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. Over here in Perth, and you're over in Sydney, are you?
Over in Sydney, yeah, that's right. Other side of the country.
Yeah, how are things over there?
Yeah, pretty good. I think it's like the rest of the East Coast. It's absolutely freezing at the moment. But we're surviving, so that's the main thing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So tell us a bit about yourself and what brought you to become a specialist hiking coach. That's not a common specialty.
Yeah, so basically, kind of how I, where I am now and how I ended up with this podcast is sort of what I do as a day job is I'm an online personal trainer specifically for hikers and trekkers and mountaineers, and it's not something I've done my entire life, but it's sort of a lot of things in my life has sort of really led up to sort of falling into place for this, because it is, as you said, a relatively specialist thing. So I've been a hiker for my whole life in bushwalking since I was probably 6 or 7 years old. My old man, I've done lots of hiking, always loved adventuring, always loved getting out on the trail, and it's always something that I sort of did just as a casual thing, something that relaxed me, something that was good for my mental health, and I just liked exploring and adventuring, and it was something I've always done since quite young. On the other side of things, I've sort of always been interested in sports and sports performance, and when it sort of came to realization after I left school that I probably wasn't ever going to make it as a professional athlete, I kind of thought like, look, you know what, if you can't do it, you'll teach it. So I sort of started studying sport and exercise science at university and started studying to be a personal trainer, and left uni and ended up working in the fitness industry as a personal trainer for quite a few years, training everyone under the sun. And probably about 4 years ago, sort of those two parts of my life really collided in the sense of, the love for adventure and love for hiking and my actual professional career as a personal trainer, where I'd sort of just come back into Australia after living abroad for a few years. And I got a job in one of these simulated altitude gyms in Sydney, which essentially, where there's a lot of people come into this gym to train for things like Everest Base Camp and Kilimanjaro and these sort of big bucket list adventures a lot of people are doing overseas. And yeah, they'll come into this gym for help, and it sort of became pretty obvious that, very, very quickly that even though these guys needed help on the altitude side of things, but just training in general and physical preparation in general for some of these hikes was such a massive issue, and there just wasn't a huge amount of great information around this subject. And a lot of people were coming into me and they've been online and they're like, how do I train for hiking? And they see a dozen different articles and it just wouldn't say anything. It'll be like, go out and walk and do some squats and get strong, and that's about it. But these guys had issues like foot pain and knee pain and back pain. There's people who are like thinking, okay, I don't have many hills to train on, but how do I get ready for a big mountain and all of this stuff. And that was sort of like when I sort of made the realization, that was sort of where the inspiration behind Summit Strength, which is my business these days, was born. And sort of I thought, look, there's so many hikers around the world who need help, not just Sydney, but all around the world through Australia, and online training is becoming a pretty doable thing these days. And yeah, and sort of stepped out on my own a few years ago into Summit Strength, and now these days I'm sort of helping people all through Australia and the States, all through Europe, preparing for to get ready for their adventures. And so that's sort of my whole life summed up in about 5 minutes, but that's sort of where I ended up today.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. When you put it that way, it makes complete sense. It's almost sort of strange that no one else has really thought about it very specifically, because you're quite right. A lot of people go to personal trainers and they go to get fit for something like Everest Base Camp or Kilimanjaro, and yet they're not necessarily being trained specifically for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And typically sort of what I saw was like there was sort of two different ways people would go. Like way number one, they might go see their regular personal trainer down the gym and get help there, and yes, that is good, and it will usually get you to a point. But most personal trainers, they're not hikers. They don't really understand that hiking is very, very particular, and it's got its own set of demands, and a lot of people just consider it just walking. But as being a hiker, we know it's not just that.
Oh,
we know rough trails, we know down hills, we know carrying a pack and all of this stuff. And so sometimes there was just a lot of the time with a regular personal trainer, you might just be missing some of that sort of insider knowledge, you could say.
Yeah, sure.
But then on the other side of things, you'd a lot of people, the sort of hiking specialist coaches, they were sort of hikers who had a little bit of interest in training, physical preparation, but they may not have that huge background in regards to, knew what they were doing in regards to some of the deeper things as training. And I just happened to be, really lucky enough that I sort of sat in the middle, and, I sort of had a foot in both worlds, and yeah, that sort of was just the stars aligned on that front.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. So how can a hiker get fit for hiking, especially if they don't have easy access to trails, or at least trails that may be as challenging as the trails they are training for? So obviously something like, in Australia, Kilimanjaro or Everest Base Camp, particularly in WA where it's quite flat, you don't really have that terrain.
Yeah, so it's an interesting one because typically the first place people go to for answers for this, they'll go to Google, they'll go to Facebook, they're like, all right, how do I get fit for hiking? And 9 times out of 10, someone will say, just go out and hike.
Yeah.
It's like, well, yeah, that's awesome if you can, but as you said, a lot of us don't have easy access to trails, or we might live a busy life, whatever. So it's not, in a perfect world, yeah, we could get out and hike every single week or a couple of times a week, but for a lot of us, yeah, not super realistic. But what I often advocate for hikers is sort of a combination of a few things on top of sort of whatever your normal hiking may be doing. One type of training which I think is incredibly undervalued for hikers, but I think it has such incredible benefits for anyone from a day hiker up to a full-on hardcore mountaineer, is doing a bit of strength training in your week. And it doesn't have to be complicated, doesn't have to be crazy, but even spending, a couple of 40-minute sessions in a week, it can do amazing things for reducing the risk of aches and pains and injuries on the trail, making sort of elevation hiking much easier. So when you're actually, going up hills, your legs are quite stronger and everything feels much easier, making pack carrying more comfortable, and even improving what's called movement efficiency. So sort of every single step you take uses less energy, basically the stronger you are. And over a long day's worth of hiking, that can really add up. And that's one facet of training which any hiker can absolutely get around, whether they do strength training in a gym, at home, outdoors, whatever it may be, but that can be absolutely amazing. The second sort of facet of training, which again, any hiker can have access to, and it's something that I get a lot of my guys to do, is something I call hiking specific conditioning, which is sort of a fancy way of saying cardio training, which is targeted towards particular aspects of hiking fitness. So for example, it might involve doing some loaded pack walks around your neighborhood and literally just throwing on a pack for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and just walking around the local neighborhood. And even if you don't have access to hills, giving that extra stimulus from, a few extra kilos on your back and maybe a few extra kilos than you are going to be carrying on the trail, that can go a long way. Or doing things like stair intervals or hill intervals, and you might not have a lot of elevation on your local trails, but you might be able to find a set of stairs that will take you, 2, 3, 4 minutes to climb up, and you might do repeats on that. And each week you either add a little bit of pack weight or do a little bit extra. Or you might do something just like called tempo walking, where you sort of just do fast, slow walking intervals around your local neighborhood, and you go quick for a couple of minutes and slow for a couple of minutes. And that in itself can be a pretty solid training session. And really thinking about, what do I, on the hikes that I'm doing, whether it's a big hike or my local hikes, what are the things I need to improve on? What are the challenges I'm going to be facing? And then thinking, okay, what can I do around my local neighborhood or local area, which can sort of replicate this slightly? And you might not be able to do it on the trail, but you can often find things that can get you ready for these around your local neighborhood. And then alongside all of that, something that I think often gets neglected from a lot of hikers is doing a little bit of mobility and flexibility training, which is simply just doing some stretching or some foam rolling. But there's so many hikers who, you can get some massive benefits from just a little bit of that work. And it might make stepping up on the bigger, on rock scrambling a little bit easier. It might, help your joints move a little bit happier. So the foot pain, the knee pain, the back pain isn't so, regular, which a lot of people struggle with, or whatever it may be. And doing a little of that stuff in your week. And I always find the combination of strength work, that hiking specific conditioning, the mobility and flexibility work on top of whatever hiking you can do, it can really get you ready for anything, whether it's, your first overnight hike, whether it's your first multi-day, whether it's something as big as Kilimanjaro or whatever, that it really can go a long way.
Yeah, certainly what you said about, flexibility is something that I've sort of realized a bit later in my hiking, that I've got very poor flexibility, even though I've got very good leg strength. And that's something that I've had to work on because I've had injuries like plantar fasciitis. So on that, I guess, how can a hiker reduce the chance of injury? Knee pain and plantar fasciitis, I think, are both fairly common with hikers. So what would be your advice regarding that?
Yeah, so typically there's sort of a combination of things that go into this, and whether it's, as you said, knee pain and plantar fasciitis are probably the two big ones that a lot of hikers face. And typically the combination of things I talk about is strength training, mobility work, and gradual increase in load. Now, the strength training is pretty simple in the sense that if the muscles that support these joints are stronger, it means the joints themselves are going to take a little bit extra, a little less force when you're actually taking step after step after step, and when you're doing downhills and when you're doing rough terrain. So specifically for the knee, in regards to strengthening, the muscles that tend to support the knee include the quadriceps, the glutes, the hamstrings, and the calves. They're the four big ones, which will go a long, long way to helping with your knee pain. And doing some structured strength work, which you can consistently string together over, a number of weeks, can do really, really good things for helping for the knee. Now, when we're talking about the feet, it's pretty similar muscles that do support the feet, but you're probably going to get a little bit more benefit from putting extra time into developing the calves and doing lots and lots of calf raises and other calf strengthening exercises. And typically, strengthen up those areas. Not only is it going to help prevent the risk of injury and the risk of pain, but it's also going to be super beneficial just for making hiking easier and just making elevation easier. So you do get a good bang for your buck there. Now, the next thing you want to be looking at in regards to reducing this risk of pain is essentially the mobility stuff. And talking about the knee specifically, essentially the knee itself as a joint, it's what's known as a stable joint. So essentially, aside from doing its flexing and extending, so just the bending, the way that knee joint goes, typically the knee doesn't want a huge amount of extra movement through the joint in a perfect world. However, the joints above and below it, so the hips and the ankles, they're both what's known as mobile joints. So in the perfect world, these joints want to be pretty happy, pretty free. They want to have quite a big range of motion. But unfortunately, for a lot of hikers, due to our day-to-day life and due to a whole bunch of other reasons, the ankles and the hips can often get really, really, really tight. And what will typically happen here is if the body wants to find movement through one of these joints, say you're stepping down a hill, say you're stepping off a rock, or whatever it may be, but the body can't actually find the movement it wants at one of the ankles or the hips, what it'll do is allow extra movement through the joints, which are either above or below it. So when we're talking about knees, the knee will get a little bit extra movement, and that can lead to a little bit of discomfort and pain. And in regards to the feet, if the calves are too tight, then the feet will have extra movement, and that can lead to a little bit of discomfort. So essentially, if we can make sure our ankles have a good range of motion and our hips have a good range of motion, we can really, really reduce the risk of pain and discomfort and significant injury through the knees and through the feet as well. And then the third thing in regards to load management is, the biggest risk factor in regards to plantar fasciitis or, some types of knee pain is just a big jump in hiking distance, which you're not used to. And a lot of people, they might come out of, a string of bad weather, or they might just get a few days off and they'll be able to book on a hike or whatever it may be, but they haven't done much. And then all of a sudden they do a huge amount. And that's an easy risk factor to control. But you just need a little bit of planning. So if you haven't done a huge amount of hiking recently and you've got a big hike coming up, that's a pretty clear sign. It's like, okay, don't give up your big hike, but you want to fit in a little bit of extra walking in the lead up to make sure the body's not so surprised. And then the fourth thing to go on top of that, actually, which I always do need to mention, is 100% if you've ever struggled with any of these things, use hiking poles or trekking poles on the trail, because there's such an easy win that takes a really significant amount of force off the knees and the feet for every single step you take, in particular on the downhills. And there's such an easy win, and I could not recommend that enough if you do struggle with those either of those issues.
Yeah, I did a hike recently where I didn't bring the trekking poles, and it really made a huge difference. I'm so used to it, particularly on those mountain climbs sort of trails. It can become chalk and cheese, the difference between the two. On that topic, something that can be difficult in flat places like WA is training for elevation. You touched on this a little bit, but how do you train for this if you don't live in the mountains? And also, how do you get fit enough to not be huffing and puffing and be out of breath?
Yeah, so basically, really, really interesting area again, and this is probably one of the big things that a lot of hikers run into. Because, a lot of us, particularly in Australia, we don't live near mountains. Not many of us have that elevation. And once or when the world's a little bit more back to normal, and when people go overseas for big hikes, you can be sometimes tripped up a little bit. So So in regards to the elevation, I typically break it up into two things people struggle with. Number one is their legs get really burny and they struggle from climbing up and up and up and up and up, and the legs get burny and shaky and absolutely fatigued. And the other side of things is, as you said, quite often people get huffed and puffed and really struggle, with their breathing when they're going up hills. So I typically separate the two, though a lot of the training will cross over. Now, on the leg burniness, the things that I generally recommend is, as I was saying before, strength training, going to do a really, really, really good help in this, and it's going to be incredibly beneficial. Now, one mistake I often see with a lot of hikers in regards to strength training, if they are doing it, is sometimes they just focus on the really sort of high repetition muscular endurance training in the gym. So they might be doing squats or lunges or step ups, but doing 15, 20, 30 at a time and just chasing that muscle burn. And yes, that can be really, really beneficial, but I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend hikers, if they are considering this, to probably spend an equal amount of time doing some strength training that's a little bit more difficult, a little bit more, have more raw resistance, and doing things that you might be able to do between 5 and 8 repetitions at a time before you need a rest. Now, it's a little bit counterintuitive because you think, okay, how is that going to help with my hiking? Because I'm doing step up to step up to step. But this can be incredibly, incredibly, incredibly beneficial for any hiker, and in particular for elevation hiking, because it can make every step much, much easier. So step number one is do strength training and get a nice mix of both high repetition stuff and low repetition stuff. Now, the second thing is sort of building off what I was talking about before in regards to the stair or hill intervals, is the best way to go about this is to find yourself either a nice long set of stairs, a nice long hill. If you don't have access to that, you can go into, in a gym with a Stairmaster or a Jacob's ladder or something where you are sort of climbing up and up and up. And essentially, you're going to start doing some relatively long intervals of climbing. And you might do 3 minutes at a time and then rest for a minute or two and do it again. Or you might do 5 minutes or 8 minutes or 12 minutes or whatever it may be. But then as you start getting used to it, start to load this up with a pack, even if you're not carrying a full pack on your actual trip, but just adding this extra weight on this type of training can do incredible things to help you. And so you might do, a set of stairs 5 times. First week, you might just do body weight. Second week, you might do 4 kilos on your back. Next week, you might do 6. Next week, you might do 8. And it will improve incredibly quickly, but it can be super, super, super beneficial for that elevation hiking. And then alongside that, even if you don't have a huge amount of hills to hike on, just making sure you are getting out for your longer hikes anyway, even if they are super easy and super flat, because that will develop certain aspects of fitness, which is pretty essential. And put those three things together: the strength training, the loaded, elevation training, and the regular hiking. That'll get most people where they need to be. When we're talking about the huffing and puffing factor, there are some particular things you can do, and on top of sort of what I was describing there, what I'd really, really like for my hikers, and I've seen some really, really good results, is doing some very, very particular interval training on something which you can go relatively fast on. And typically it'll be a piece of gym cardio equipment. So something like a stationary bike or an elliptical or a rower, or even like a set of stairs at your local home, local neighborhood. But something you can push a decent pace on that's not going to really, you don't have to watch your footing, you don't have to worry about, grinding up your joints or anything like that, but something that you can just push a good pace on. And then doing some very, very particular intervals. Now, these intervals, they're called aerobic power intervals. And essentially what they're doing is they're teaching the body to work at the upper limits of its aerobic energy system, which is again a little bit technical, but I love talking about it. But essentially working at the upper limit, the highest level that your aerobic energy system can maintain, while still using, oxygen as a fuel source. So what this means is when you're actually going up hills, you can sort of go quicker paces for longer paces, but still use oxygen as a fuel source, as opposed to using another energy system, which is a little bit, which doesn't use oxygen and has all types of, it's a little bit less efficient. But if we can develop this type of training, it can go a long, long, long way to helping you feel more comfortable on these hills. And without getting too more technical, basically how you do them is you go really, really, really quick for 3 minutes at a time. So you go quick, 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 get yourself relatively huffed and puffed, so you're breathing like quite heavily for 3 minutes, Then you rest completely for 90 seconds and you just catch your breath, take it easy, walk around, sit down, whatever you want to do. And then you repeat that anywhere from 5 to 9 times. And then each time you do this, you just add an extra repetition on. So first week you might do 5, next week you might do 6, next week you might do 7, and so forth. And this simple approach to interval training, it can really do incredible things to reducing that huffing and puffing when you're on hills. And if you can string together 4, 5, 6 weeks of this and work relatively hard, you will be amazed at the difference it can make. And yeah, it's one of my favorite types of training for hikers who do struggle on their breathing going up hills.
Mm. So we've talked, I guess, a bit about hill training and, getting fit for that. I guess the other aspect that can be challenging for a lot of people is just not having the time. So if you are quite time poor, how can you get fit with the limited time you do have?
Yeah, so this is something, again, a lot of hikers that I hear from run into, and we all do have our own definitions of time poor. Now, some people will say, okay, my time poor is I can only train, 3 times a week for an hour, and that might be their time poor. Some people might be saying, okay, I can only do 30 minutes at a time. Some people I've worked with, they've been nurses in the pandemic and they can literally only fit in, 5 minutes a day. Like, everyone's a little bit different. But typically what I'd recommend is, again, what I was saying before, the strength training, the hiking specific conditioning. You can do 10, 15, 20 minutes of that at a time if you sort of follow, one of the, a relatively structured workout and get a lot out of it. And you can do it at home or around your local neighborhood. That can be pretty easy and pretty beneficial. And that's a good way of going about it, even if you can't get out on the trails. But then it's also finding other opportunities in your week and in your day where you can fit in a little bit of training if you are really strapped for time. So, some people that I've worked with, will say, okay, when you're, brushing your teeth or when you're waiting for the kettle to boil or waiting for your coffee to be made, you'll just do a few calf raises, at home, or do a few squats. And each time you have this sort of dead time in your day, just fit in something. And it sounds silly. Doesn't sound like much, but over the day, over the week, over the months, it can really add up. Or doing things like, in your office, if you've got a lunch break, if someone works in an office block, or either somewhere nearby that does have a bit of like stairs, and just duck out and just do 5 minutes of stairs or 10 minutes of stairs in your lunch break. Not enough to get you super sweaty and need a shower or anything, but just a little bit there. Or even, fitting in things with your social life. And, if you are meeting up with a friend for coffee, walk and talk with your coffee, work with a pack on your back, or go out and, walk the dog with a pack on your back or whatever it is. But have a think about where can you find opportunities in your life to fit in those little bits of training. And then also on top of that, if you're sort of not 100% sure what you're doing on this front, just reach out to someone who's done it before. Reach out to a friend or someone who knows about training, or talk to someone at a gym, or shoot me an email or whatever it may be, and get a little bit of advice, because sometimes it can be hard coming up with this stuff for yourself, and just getting a set of outside eyes onto it. It can give you a few good ideas on this front. But even if you are super strapped for time, I would highly recommend just don't admit defeat and just say, I'm just going to get fit on the trail, I'm just going to deal with it on the trail. But fit in what you can, because it can make a massive difference, even the smallest things, just to your sort of comfort and your enjoyment, on your adventures, whatever they may be.
I guess something that can be a bit of an issue here in Perth is that the summers are really hot. And so a lot of people kind of, I guess, have a bit of a break from the hiking season, and then it comes back on. And then conversely, in other states, they've got the reverse where, there's snow, so you can't hike at that time of year. What are some complementary activities that can assist with hiking fitness to kind of maintain it in those gap times?
Yeah, so specifically, in the heat and when we're out of hiking season, it's tough, and a lot of us aren't going to get on the trail, and it can be really tricky to do that, which is perfectly fine. And I think the complementary activities is, you kind of want to look at 3 different areas of things to keep up. Now, area number 1 is hiking is essentially an exercise which involves long duration of low intensity exercise. And that's the first thing we need to sort of, try and fit some type of that into our week if we want to maintain things outside of hiking season. And you want to sort of have a think about, okay, what can I do in my weather with my weather constraints, which may be similar to this. So a lot of people, that I work with, they'll pick up a little bit of swimming. And it doesn't have to be fancy swimming. They might do it with fins, they might do it with flippers, might do it with paddle boards, or they just swim normally. But just doing laps up and down and, doing that once a week for an extended period of time. Or it might involve, going out and doing some water sports in the heat. If, you can go out kayaking or paddle boarding or something, if you do get that sort of water breeze or whatever it may be. Or a lot of people, end up in the gym environment, and they'll do, as much as it's not quite as much fun as hiking, but, you obviously get air conditioning and that, and something to keep you going on that front. So have a think about, what can you do that is going to be that long duration training. And I think that's really, really the first point of call you want to look at. Now, second point of call is what can you do to sustain your strength? Now, I keep on going on about it, but strength training, you can do that in any weather, whether it's at home, whether it's a gym with air conditioning, whatever it may be. And, keep that up all year round, definitely worthwhile. And then number 3, you want to have a think about what can you do which can give you just a little bit extra burst of slightly higher intensity exercise. Now, it doesn't have to be stuff that's actually going to kill you. You don't have to go to a gym and do a million burpees or anything like that, but something that's going to give you a little bit extra burst of intensity, get you a little bit huffed and puffed. And kind of what we're trying to do there is just keep the body used to working a little bit harder. So when you do hit those hills again or those stairs again, it's not a complete surprise. So this may be a case of, again, taking what we were talking about, the long duration training and just doing little spurts of quick there. So you might be swimming and, once a week you might go down and just do some quicker laps instead of the nice long and slow stuff. Or it might be a case of going into your gym and doing like a cycle class, once a week, which gives you a little bit extra push. Or it might be a case of waking up in the morning, like quite early and having a run or doing some stair climbs or something that is going to get you a little bit of puff before the sun comes up or whatever it may be. But in the off season, if you're looking at long duration training, a little bit of strength maintenance or development, and just something that gives you a little bit extra burst, that sort of will get you pretty good for, the off season and whatever it may be. And then when you get back on the trail, it hopefully won't be so much of a surprise and you can get right back in your hiking as soon as you need to.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. I guess another aspect of hiking that I guess can be a bit of its own sort of area is multi-day hiking. I guess, a lot of hikers find on multi-day hikes, there's a few things that they'll find is that you've got repeated stress for multiple days. And also the other thing that can happen is, you're sleeping in very cold conditions, camping, or, in WA, there's a lot of shelters where people stay overnight. And then all their joints and muscles are sore the next day or a bit stiff. What are things that hikers can do in multi-day hikes to look after themselves?
Yeah, so this is a great subject because, I love talking about training. I love talking about physical preparation, but it does take time to develop this stuff. It does take consistency, and I'm aware a lot of hikers, they're not interested in this stuff. I would love if they were, but sometimes they don't have the patience. But this subject, when you're actually actions you can do on the trail, any hike you can do, it doesn't take a huge amount of effort, but it can make a really immediate difference, which is fantastic. So when it comes down to this type of, multi-days and, when you are sort of, getting sore muscles, you got to back up day to day, you're sleeping in the cold and all that, there's a few really, really easy things you can do to keep yourself more comfortable. Now, number one that I always recommend to my hikers is most hikers on the trail tend to undereat. Now, no, I'm not saying that, you can get away with hiking. Obviously, there's pack concerns and there's weight concerns and all of that, and hikers are pretty conscious of that. But and you can get away with eating pretty much anything. People will eat barely any food on the trail and they'll get through their hiking days. And it's not a case of surviving, because we'll survive on pretty much anything in regards to food. But if you really want to thrive, if you want to back up day to day as well as you can, you want to recover as well as you can, you want your muscles feeling good, probably just eating a little bit more for any hiker will probably go a really, really long way. Typically what I recommend to my hikers is when they're actually hiking on their day hikes, but also their multi-days and their overnights, is around, aside from their normal meals that they usually do, is try and just eat a little bit of something every single hour. Now, it might just literally be a couple of bites of fruit. It might be a handful of nuts. It might be just a little bit small, but every single hour have a little snack. And essentially what that does is that just tops up an energy stores, just make sure we're not ever reaching that overly fatigued state where we absolutely get knackered. And just doing that in itself will go a long, long, long way to helping your day, but also, help you recover and back up day to day. Now, the other area that I often recommend to a lot of hikers is just doing a little bit of self massage at the end of the day. It can go a long, long way to help stopping things tighten up, to helping your legs feel a little bit better, to help you wake up a bit fresher, just aiding your recovery. And simply what this involves is just either getting your water bottle or your trekking pole and just sort of massaging, or even a Cork massage ball, which you can buy online these days, and they weigh like a gram. And just spending a little bit of time massaging the muscles which have done the most work during the day. So typically this will involve, rolling up and down on your calves, maybe rolling up and down on your quads, maybe do it a little bit on your feet. Just spending a couple of minutes on each area, in your tent, or if you got a little bit of a room in your campground or whatever it may be, it can go a huge way and it can make you feel absolutely great. And I try to get my hikers to do a little 10-minute routine every single evening at the end of their day, because it goes so far, and that's a really, really amazing way to go about it. And then the third thing, there's so many things I could talk about here. The last one I'll talk about right now is a really easy addition to your pack, which can make a dramatic difference to how good your legs feel day to day, and also keep you warm at night, is bringing a set of compression recovery tights. Now, compression recovery tights, they are something I get all my hikers to use because they are so good. And essentially what they do is just help your sort of circulation a little bit after you've finished a day's worth of hiking. So instead of stopping hiking and all the blood sort of just begins to settle and the body just goes back to normal, what it does is just keeps things pumping a little bit more, helps flush out waste products a little bit more, and essentially just makes your legs feel good. And I'll get my hikers to either wear them for a couple of hours around camp at the end of the day, or even wear them overnight while they sleep. And it can make a massive, massive difference just to waking up and having your legs feel good. Now, it's not going to fix any issues, it's not going to fix any injuries, but it's such an easy win to make you feel good in the morning that one of my favorite things. And I wear them on all my overnights, all my multi-days, and they're absolutely amazing. And again, barely weighs anything. It's a really good camp wear, really good sleepwear, but might cost you a couple of $100, but it'll last you for a good, serious amount of time. And they can, they're so worth it. So typically make sure you're getting enough food, do a little bit of self-massage, and if you can, get around that compression recovery wear. And, those three things, massive difference on those multi-day hikes, and something anyone can get around with barely any effort.
That's really cool. Never heard that one before, but the compression tights. But that sounds like a really great idea, the way you've described it. And I also appreciate that you've talked about the weight here, because I guess a lot of people are gram shavers and they don't want they don't want to be carrying medicine balls and all sorts of stuff like massage balls, I should say, because they they don't want to have that extra stuff. But then, as you said, like, you can use your water bottle or a pole. So, and that's not extra stuff you have to carry.
Exactly, and even those Cork massage balls I mentioned the other day, I think I weighed mine the other day. It's literally half a gram, but it goes along. Like, you can just sort of get into the little hot spots and get into tight muscles, and I always keep one in my pack, and I give some to all my hikers. And lots of places sell them online these days, but they're a really handy addition because, I've seen those sort of collapsible foam rollers, and I've seen people lug around their heavy lacrosse balls, and that's not something many hikers want to do. So,
no, definitely not. I guess the other something else that I've noticed has become very popular. I think the ultralight thing was a very popular thing for a while, and it still is. But now I've noticed, and it might be as a result of COVID, is that there's a lot of people who are now, maybe because they're stuck and they don't have a lot of annual leave, so that they're all wanting to do these like fastest known time, like super fast packing of trails. And I think in the past it was doing like 40Ks, But now people are looking at doing extremely long kilometers, and sometimes, you know, sometimes they are very fit individuals and they can do it, and some of them are, you know, people who've probably not done a lot of training but are just trying to fit something in. Is there any advice you can offer for people looking to walk sort of extremely long distances, you know, doing like a multi-day that's, you know, like several hundred kilometers in record time? How do you get fit for that?
Yeah, so I've definitely seen a few more people leaning towards this as well, and it's becoming, I don't know, I'm sure it's been popular for a while, but it's becoming a little bit more apparent, at least in my world. Um, Typically on that front, all the things I've mentioned today, so the strength work, the hiking specific conditioning, the recovery and mobility work, the hiking, that's all going to lead into the same things, and the same benefits for, you know, anyone attempting big distances, big speeds, or even an FKT. One thing I would sort of include into it is sort of doing some what I was talking about before, the tempo walking and doing sort of extended intervals of really quick walking. And if you're aware that, like, hey, okay, I've got to walk at a particular speed to hit these distances, and it might be, I don't know, 6 kilometers an hour, 7 kilometers an hour, or whatever, depending on what you're doing. Just teaching your body to walk a little bit quicker than that, for shorter distances. So it might be 4 minutes at a time, 8 minutes at a time that you're walking at, you know, something that's a couple of kilometers quicker than whatever maths you've worked out that you need to be doing. Because basically the body really, really doesn't like walking at quicker speeds than it's used to. And it'll do anything it can to sort of slow you down unconsciously just to save energy. So if you can teach the body to get a little bit more comfortable with speed you're not used to, and quicker than you need to be, it's sort of unconscious. When it tries to slow you down, it won't feel quite as bad fitting in, you know, going at the slightly quicker pace. So that's one thing. Definitely get your body used to moving at speeds quicker than you're used to. The next thing is the guys particularly doing these things, again, gram shavers, again, really conscious about weight. And I see people really getting a little bit over obsessive on that, because obviously you don't want to carry around too much, but don't skimp on your food. Don't, you know, go try to do what I said before, cue yourself to eat regularly, make sure you've got enough food to fuel yourself, and make sure that is something you're not skimping on in regards to weight, because that is going to make or break one of these attempts. That is going to make or break your actual ability to get through longer days. And if you are hiking at quicker speeds, the body's going to be churning through much more energy. So make sure lots and lots of food, particularly emphasizing easy to digest, quick digesting carbohydrates, unless you're particularly adverse to that, because that is where you're going to be getting, you know, that's going to be providing the most fuel. The other things as well is just sort of looking after your other areas of nutrition and, you know, staying hydrated, keeping on top of that. So making sure your urine is staying around about clear to straw colored throughout, because that's an easy win, and a lot of people neglect that on the trail. But even a little bit of dehydration will significantly affect you on something like this. Making sure on top of your electrolytes, so you're having, you know, whatever you're bringing, you know, make sure you're having that on the trail, because again, easy win, but a lot of people neglect it, and it's something that will, you know, hold you back on these FKTs or quicker things. And then the final thing as well is, you know, using a little bit of strategic bit of caffeine, you know, can be really beneficial if you're not too adverse to caffeine. And you might not be stopping to cook coffees or to make coffees or anything like that. A lot of people will be really trying to save the minutes, but bringing some, like, you know, no-dose caffeine pills or little caffeine strips, and it can be really beneficial, just sort of get you through the tougher sections of the trail. Absolutely amazing for endurance performance in regards to, you know, making things feel easier, improving your endurance, and just getting you through a tough day and a tough section. And it's a really easy thing, you know, again, a really light thing a lot of people can bring, but on these things particular, when you're really pushing the distance and you're really going to be fighting that fatigue, a little bit of caffeine can go a long way. So if you're not averse to it, probably bring some of that and you know, time that out through the day. And yeah, put all those things together, and, you know, I think it will, you know, it will go a long way for a lot of people with these super quick hikes coming up.
No, all good advice. So with the people that you have been advising through your business, what are some of your favorite success stories of people who have achieved some amazing things?
Yeah, so there's it's hard to sort of choose one. because everyone is so unique in what they're doing, and everyone's doing different things. And I'd be tempted to say some of the guys who've done some really, really big adventures like Elbrus, or they've sort of gone up to the top of their first 14,000 or over in the US, or they've done Kili, the first big one. But I guess I think probably my favorite ones are the guys who've actually overcome an ache or pain, which has been holding them back their hiking. And it's a story I hear a lot from my hikers, in the sense that, they maybe love their hiking and they may be slowly building up distances, but what's really holding them back from having a really good time and also doing some of the things that they really enjoy is just a pain. And it's just pain and recurring pains and things that are just getting on their mind. Now, one of my favorite stories is a lady called Andrea, who I've worked with. She's down in Melbourne, so she was an online client. She came to me initially, we were chatting, and she was like, look, I love hiking. I've just discovered hiking, a few years ago. I've been really getting into it, but I've been really, really struggling to sort of get onto harder hikes. Number one, because I got some serious knee pain that's really, really giving me issues. But number two, like, some of the bigger hikes are just thrashing me, and I'm just not having so much fun. And it is something that she was a little bit concerned about. And so we sort of started working together, and we were like, look, we're going to start doing all these things I've talked about, but we're going to try and get on top of the knee. We're going to try and get you fitter for the hikes. And in the first few weeks, she was sort of consistent. She was doing this and that. She was like, oh, I'm not noticing, a huge amount of change. Came around about week 5 or 6, and she was like, you know what, the knee's still there, but I'm really noticing a difference on the hills. And I'm getting to these hills, and I'm actually realizing I'm not dreading them anymore, but I'm actually really enjoying them. And I'm feeling like, I'm getting up them really good. I'm getting to the top, I'm not huffing and puffing. And she was like, I'm feeling like that's something that's changing. And that was kind of the turning point. From there, it was just awesome. Just kept on improving the fitness, kept on improving on the distances. Round about, I think, week 10 or week 11, it took a little while for her, but she started noticing some differences in her knee. It started getting less and less and less. And then just the hiking from there, like, as soon as the knee started to go down, it just exploded. She went over to Tassie and did the overland and got to it absolutely fine. She's doing all these different hikes all around, and it's been really, really amazing to see just her go strength to strength, and actually even, like, cool enough, like, even though this was one of my favorite stories either way, but she's actually she loved it so much, and she's been doing her fitness certifications for a while, and she's actually started working with me as another coach now. So now she's helping other hikers.
That's awesome.
To kind of become this, and she's been through it, and she's and it's just sort of changed her hiking, and she's helping other people now. So that's probably my favorite story, even without her actually coming on board Summit Strength. But yeah, she really went from strength to strength, and it's really amazing to see.
That's great. No, that's a really awesome story. I guess for those interested in your coaching, where can they find out more information?
Yeah, so there's probably 2 places that are probably best to find out a little bit more. Like, if you are interested in learning a little bit about the coaching side of things, and you're like, you know what, this might be something I might be interested in, I just want to hear a little bit more what Rowan has to say. And you can find my website at summitstrength.com.au. And on there, it has a bit about me, about what I do. It has a bunch of blog articles about all different types of training. And it obviously has talks about my program. You can reach out through there. On the other side of things, if you're like, you know what, I'm interested in this subject and I'd love to learn a little bit more, but maybe coaching's not for me, but I just want to learn more about training for hiking. If you love a good podcast, I do run a podcast purely around this, and it's called the Training for Trekking podcast. And inside there, I just share information around training and injury prevention and pain prevention for hiking and a whole bunch of different things. So if you're interested in listening to any strategies around that, you can find that on pretty much any podcast platform. And they're probably the best places to find me there.
That's awesome. Thank you, Rowan. It's been really great to talk to you and hear about your advice regarding hiking fitness. This is something we've been wanting to cover for a long time, and it's great to have someone with such great professional knowledge to help advise our listeners.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I really appreciate you having me on, and I do hope some of the listeners can get some value out of this, and hopefully it'll help them towards whatever adventures they're leading into.
Awesome. No, thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode or any other episode of Real Trail Talk, then please rate us on whatever platform you're currently listening to us on. Ratings really help us to reach an audience, especially those who are looking to learn about the outdoors in Western Australia and Australia in general. If you had any questions or suggestions for future episodes, you can email us at realtrailtalk@gmail.com or contact us through our social media channels. Thanks again, and stay tuned for our next episode.